Never imagined the people I loved most would plan to erase me while smiling in my face. But the day I stumbled across that well, every lie fell apart. My name is Noah, and if there was ever a moment that ripped the blindfold off my eyes, it was the afternoon I found out exactly how disposable I was to my own family. It was a cloudy Sunday in March, the kind of day when everything feels a little heavier. My dad, Victor, had called me over to help sort out a stack of tax forms because, as usual, neither he nor my mom, Helen, could be bothered to learn how to do anything online. I didn't mind, at least. That's what I told myself. I'd been helping them pay the property taxes and utilities for 5 years straight. My brother, Ryan, didn't lift a finger. He'd never kept a job for more than 6 months. But my parents always said, he's just finding his path. My path. Apparently, mine was to fund their lifestyle while they pretended I barely existed. I sat at their cluttered kitchen table, sifting through folders and receipts. That's when I saw it, a blue envelope labeled estate plan and last will. My heart thudded against my ribs. I wasn't the type to snoop, but after everything I'd done, after every bill I'd paid, I couldn't pretend I wasn't curious. I slipped it out and started reading. It only took a minute for my stomach to drop into my shoes. Every last thing, the house, the savings, the antique collection my grandfather left them, was going to Ryan. The only mention of me was a single sentence. We love both our sons equally. Yeah, equally. That's why I was the one paying the mortgage while Ryan lounged around playing video games. I sat there gripping the paper so tightly my knuckles went white. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, but nothing went down. The betrayal was so dense, I could barely breathe. How long had this been their plan? Did they ever really appreciate the sacrifices I'd made? Or was I just the fallback plan they never intended to reward? I didn't realize Victor had come back into the kitchen until he spoke. Noah, you find the utility statements. I looked up, my face probably pale as chalk. I didn't even try to hide the will. I held it out, my hand shaking. My voice came out cold and flat. So this is how it is. He blinked. What's that supposed to mean? This, I hissed, shaking the papers. Everything goes to Ryan. Everything. And you two weren't even going to tell me? His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Eventually, he let out this sigh, like I was just some moody teenager instead of the person keeping a roof over their heads. It's complicated, he said. I laughed, but it was a harsh, ugly sound. No, it's simple. You decided he deserved everything, and I deserved nothing. He rubbed the bridge of his nose, avoiding my eyes. You don't need it, Noah. You have a good job. Ryan struggles. That was their excuse. The same excuse they'd used for 30 years of favoritism. My anger turned into something sharper, something I couldn't name. I set the will down and called over my shoulder. Mom, come in here. Helen appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a dish towel. When she saw the documents, her mouth pinched tight. But she didn't deny it. She didn't even look surprised. Honey, she began, her voice so gentle it made me want to scream. We just want to make sure Ryan is secure. You've always been independent. I took a step back, trying to steady myself. My voice was trembling, but I forced the words out. You knew how much I was helping. You let me pay your bills while you planned to leave me nothing. It's not like that, she whispered. Then what is it like? No answer. For a moment, none of us moved. The only sound was the clock ticking over the microwave, counting down the seconds until I finally snapped. Got it, I said quietly, glad to know exactly where we stand. And before either of them could say another word, I walked out the door, shutting it behind me with a calmness I didn't feel. I got in my car, but I didn't start it right away. My hands were shaking too badly. I sat there, staring at the house I'd practically been bankrolling, and realized something ugly. I was nothing but a wallet to them, a convenience. That night, I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Victor's voice in my head. It's complicated. No, it wasn't. It was perfectly clear. At dawn, I made the first real decision for myself in years. I logged into my online banking, scrolled to the list of automatic payments, mortgage, water, electric, and I canceled every single one. My heart was pounding, but I felt lighter with every click. No dramatic goodbye message. No threats. Just freedom. For the next 2 weeks, I didn't hear a word. Not even a text. I think they expected me to come crawling back like always. But the second the mortgage bill hit their mailbox, everything changed. And this time, I wasn't the one who was going to cave. The day I stopped paying their bills, I realized just how quickly love can turn into entitlement. I thought maybe, just maybe, some tiny part of them would feel embarrassed. Maybe they'd pick up the phone, apologize, and finally treat me like more than a utility account with a heartbeat. I should have known better. 3 days after I canceled the payments, the first text came in. Just a cold, transactional line from my dad. Mortgage overdue. Please handle. No greeting. No acknowledgement. Like I was a damn employee. I stared at it, almost impressed by the audacity. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I forced myself to put the phone down. If I answered now, I'd end up back in the same cycle. Shame, guilt, compliance. I wasn't doing that anymore. 2 days later, my mom tried a softer approach. Noah, honey, the power bill came in. Could you take care of it this month? Just this once. Just this once. As if I hadn't been doing it just this once for half a decade. I ignored it. Hours later, another message popped up. We really need you to help us. You know how hard it is for your father. I clenched my jaw so tight my molars hurt. Still no apology. Still no mention of the will. Just more demands. I waited a day before replying. I'm not paying. Ask Ryan. The read receipt popped up almost immediately. No response. That was Friday. On Sunday, my phone started buzzing while I was in the middle of cleaning out my garage. One call, then another, then 5 texts in a row. I didn't even check them. I turned off my phone and tossed it in a drawer. I spent the afternoon in a weird, heavy silence. Part of me wanted to believe this would pass, that they'd calm down, that maybe they'd finally understand why I was done. But I'd underestimated just how entitled they'd become. The next morning, my building's front desk called. Hi, Mr. Rivers. Your parents are here in the lobby. I nearly dropped the box I was carrying. What? They're saying it's an emergency. It wasn't an emergency. It was a guilt trip. I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting the urge to scream. Don't let them up, I said, my voice so calm it scared me. Please ask them to leave. There was a long pause. They are refusing. Of course they were. I hung up without another word and sat on the edge of my couch, hard hammering. My phone buzzed again and again. Finally, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the texts. Mom, we're downstairs. We need to talk. Dad, this is ridiculous. Grow up. Mom, we're not leaving until you see us. My palms were slick with sweat, but under the anxiety, there was something else, an ember of anger that had been building for years. I took a deep breath, grabbed my keys, and headed downstairs. As soon as the elevator doors opened, I saw them, standing side by side, like a united front. Ryan was there too, of course, leaning against the wall, scrolling on his phone like he couldn't be bothered to look up. My mom's face lit up the second she saw me. Noah, finally. I held up a hand. Don't. Just don't. Dad's expression hardened. We're not leaving until you agree to help us. I crossed my arms. You're going to stand here all day then. Ryan finally glanced up, looking bored. Dude, can you just handle this? It's not a big deal. I turned on him, my voice steady. Not a big deal? You're 30 years old, Ryan. When are you planning to be an adult? He looked away. Mom stepped forward, her voice trembling. Honey, we didn't mean to hurt you. I let out a bitter laugh. You didn't mean to? You literally planned to erase me from your lives. You left me out of everything. And now you're here because you need money. Dad's jaw twitched. You have plenty. This isn't about the will. It's about helping your family. No, I said, my voice low. It's always about the will. You decided I didn't matter. You don't get to change your mind because the bills are due. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Please, Noah. We're your parents. I shook my head slowly. No, you're people who used me until I stopped being useful. Ryan muttered. This is so dramatic. I ignored him. My gaze never left my father's. Go home, I said. He took a step forward, like he might try to intimidate me. Maybe that would have worked when I was a kid. But now, all I felt was clarity. I repeated, voice even colder, go. Home. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Dad looked away. This isn't over. You're right, I said. It's the start of something new. I'm done. I turned and walked back to the elevator. My legs were trembling, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a coward. When I got back to my apartment, I locked the door and slid to the floor. My heart was racing, but under the adrenaline, there was relief. I knew they'd try again. I knew they'd escalate, but it didn't matter. I was ready. When my parents realized I wouldn't bankroll them anymore, they did something I never thought they'd stoop to. They turned the entire family against me. I should have seen it coming. A week passed after I turned them away in the lobby. No calls, no texts. I almost started to believe they were finally going to leave me alone. Maybe even reflect on how things had gotten this bad. But then, on a random Wednesday night, my phone started buzzing nonstop. At first, I ignored it. I was trying to watch a movie, something mindless to drown out the heaviness that had settled over me since the confrontation. But the notifications kept coming: Facebook tags, Instagram comments, screenshots from old high school friends I hadn't heard from in years. I picked up my phone, and my stomach dropped. My mom had posted a picture of our family, some old vacation photo where we were all smiling on a beach in Florida. The caption was the part that made my pulse pound in my ears. Sometimes you give everything to your children, and they still turn their backs on you. All we ever did was love you. All we wanted was a little help. Hundreds of likes. Dozens of comments. So sorry you're going through this. Kids today have no respect. Sending love. You don't deserve this. I felt like I was going to be sick. I scrolled further. My dad had shared the post and added his own commentary. We raised him. We supported him. And now he won't lift a finger when we're in need. I guess money means more to him than family. That one stung the most. As if all those years I spent quietly paying their bills meant nothing. As if I hadn't been the only one standing between them and financial ruin. I dropped my phone on the coffee table and pressed the heels of my palms to my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. But it wasn't over. Ryan, of course, couldn't resist chiming in. He shared their posts and wrote, "Some people just think they're better than the family who raised them. Must be nice to have no conscience." I wanted to punch something. Anything. I hadn't told anyone the details. Nobody knew about the will. Nobody knew they'd left me out of everything. All they saw was my parents, two aging people with sad expressions, crying about their ungrateful son. I tried to ignore it. But then, my phone rang again, this time, a call from my Aunt Linda. She never called me. Not ever. I answered, already exhausted. Her voice was sharp, tinged with disappointment. "Noah, what the hell is going on?" I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" Your mother is devastated. She said you're refusing to help them, that you're leaving them to lose their home. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. Did she mention the part where they wrote me out of the will? A pause. What? They left everything to Ryan, I said flatly. Every cent, every asset. After I spent years helping them. She was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. That's not how they're telling it. Of course it isn't, I snapped, my voice breaking. Because if they told the truth, they'd look as awful as they actually are. Noah. She started, her tone softening. I don't know all the details, but I do. I cut in. And I'm done. I hung up before she could say anything else. I stood there, shaking, feeling like the ground had cracked open under my feet. All my life, I've been terrified of being the bad guy, of disappointing them, of not doing enough. And now that I'd finally drawn a line, they were proving exactly why I should have walked away years ago. They didn't want me to be okay. They didn't want me to have boundaries. They just wanted me to be useful. Nothing more. I turned my phone off and threw it in a drawer. I didn't want to see any more comments, any more guilt trips. I spent the next 2 days in a daze, going to work, coming home, avoiding social media. But even then, I couldn't fully escape. A coworker pulled me aside in the break room, eyes wide. Hey, is everything okay with your family? I saw some stuff online. I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and forced a smile. It's complicated. Because it was. It was complicated and humiliating and ugly. And the worst part was knowing none of it would have happened if I just kept paying. If I kept being quiet. If I kept letting them use me. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, a question kept circling my mind. Why was I the only one expected to sacrifice? Why was Ryan never held accountable? Why was I the selfish one for finally saying enough? And why did my parents think they could destroy my reputation just to force me back into compliance? As I drifted off, I realized something. I wasn't going to let them control the story. If they wanted to drag my name through the mud, fine. But I was done staying silent. The next morning, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started typing. If they were going to smear me in public, then I was going to tell everyone exactly what they'd done, and I wasn't holding anything back. I never wanted it to come to this. But when you're pushed into a corner, when you watch people you trusted twist everything about you into a lie, sometimes the only thing left is the truth. I opened a blank post on Facebook. My fingers hovered over the keyboard as my heart pounded. Then I started typing. Since my family insists on telling half the story, here's the whole truth. I laid it all out. The bills I'd paid, the groceries I'd bought, the repairs I'd handled, the years I'd spent making sure my parents never went without while Ryan drifted through life without a care. I explained how I'd found the will by accident, how they'd left everything to Ryan, every dollar, every asset, and never even told me. How, when I finally set boundaries, they tried to shame me back into submission. I didn't bother sugarcoating it. I didn't try to sound polite or measured. I just wrote exactly what had happened, no filter. When I was finished, my hands were trembling, but my chest felt lighter than it had in months. Before I could second-guess myself, I hit post. I closed the laptop and went to take a shower, trying not to think about how many people were going to see it. When I came back, my phone was blowing up. Messages, notifications, friend requests from people I hadn't talked to since college. The post had already racked up over 100 likes and dozens of comments. Some were supportive. Some were shocked. A few were predictably judgmental, parroting my parents' favorite lines about respect and gratitude. But for the first time, I didn't care. I scrolled through the comments, my heart thumping with relief every time I saw someone say, "I'm glad you finally stood up for yourself. You did more than anyone should ever have to. Don't let them guilt you back into that role." It was the validation I hadn't realized I was desperate for. A few hours later, my phone rang. I didn't even need to check the caller ID. I knew it would be my mom. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, she called again. Then my dad. Then Ryan. I turned off the ringer and set the phone face down on the coffee table. I didn't want to hear another word about how selfish I was. How ungrateful. How disappointing. They'd had years to be honest with me. Years to treat me like an equal. They chose not to. That evening, as I was eating dinner, there was a knock at the door. My stomach twisted. I set down my fork and walked over, peering through the peephole. Of course, it was them. My mom's face was puffy and red. My dad looked like he'd aged 10 years in a day. And Ryan was scowling like he'd been personally inconvenienced by my existence. I didn't open the door. I pressed my palm flat against it and took a steadying breath. "Go home," I said, loud enough for them to hear. "Noah," my mom called, her voice muffled. "We just want to talk." I closed my eyes. "You've said enough," I replied. "I've said everything I needed to. Go home." There was a pause. Then my dad's voice sharp, brittle. "You think you're so righteous? You think humiliating us online makes you a better person?" I didn't answer. Because honestly, I didn't care anymore. I wasn't going to keep living under their thumb. Another knock, louder this time. Ryan's voice, dripping with disdain. "Come on, man. You made your point. You done playing the victim yet?" I felt something in my chest go cold. I wasn't the victim. I was just the only one who'd finally stopped pretending this was normal. I turned away and walked back to the couch. The knocking continued, but I ignored it. After about 10 minutes, it stopped. I listened to the quiet and felt a strange, unexpected sense of peace. Maybe this was what it felt like to finally stand up for yourself. I didn't check my phone again that night. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of messages, some from friends, some from extended family. A few of my cousins had shared my post, adding their own stories about how my parents had treated them. Apparently, I wasn't the only one they'd guilt and manipulated over the years. One of my childhood friends even sent me a message. Noah, I'm proud of you. I remember how they always treated you like you were second best. You didn't deserve that. I hadn't realized how badly I'd needed to hear it. For the first time in years, I felt like I could finally breathe. I was done pretending I owed them everything. I was done apologizing for not being their perfect, obedient son. I was done. But little did I know, Ryan wasn't finished trying to drag me back into their mess. I thought cutting them off would be the end of it, but my brother had one last card to play. The day after I posted everything online, I was feeling almost free. Like I'd finally stepped out of a cage I hadn't realized I was locked inside. But freedom, I learned quickly, can make entitled people panic. That afternoon, I was in the middle of a client call when my phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Congrats on turning everyone against us. Hope you're happy. I didn't reply. 3 minutes later, another message. You've always been jealous of me. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Jealous. I laughed out loud, actually laughed. Jealous of what? A man in his late 20s who'd never worked, never contributed, never had to face a consequence in his life. If that was the prize, he could keep it. But Ryan wasn't done. He started messaging mutual friends, people I hadn't talked to in years, telling them I was unstable, that I'd fabricated everything, that I was just bitter because I hadn't measured up. He even tried to message my boss, claiming I was mentally unwell and might lash out. It was so pathetic it almost didn't bother me. Almost. I could tell from the tone of the messages that he was unraveling. He'd always relied on the idea that he was untouchable, that no matter how much he took, someone else would clean up the mess. This time, there was no one left to shield him. I screenshotted everything he sent. I wasn't going to play his game, but I also wasn't about to let him slander me unchecked. Then I blocked his number. A few hours later, I got a call from my dad. I let it go to voicemail. His message started with a sigh, like he was already exhausted just by having to speak to me. Noah, this has gone too far. You've embarrassed this family enough. Take down your post and apologize. You're making a fool of yourself. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but I played it one more time just to be sure I'd heard correctly. Even now, after everything, they still believed I was the problem. The next morning, I woke up to a knock on my apartment door. My heart sank. I knew before I looked that it would be them. I glanced through the peephole. No parents this time. Just Ryan, standing there with his hands jammed into his hoodie pocket, rocking back on his heels like he was deciding whether to punch the door or beg. I didn't open it. But he must have seen me moving because he spoke up. Noah, man, come on. Just open the door. Let's talk. I stayed silent. He shifted closer, lowering his voice like he thought it sounded reasonable. Look, you've made your point. You had your little tantrum online, but we both know you're not going to let them lose the house. That was when something in me snapped. I yanked the door open just enough to look him dead in the eyes. Ryan, this isn't a tantrum. It's a boundary, one you clearly don't understand. He blinked, clearly surprised I'd even opened the door. Dude, be serious. You're going to let mom and dad end up on the street after everything they did for you. Everything they did for me. My voice dropped to a dangerous calm, like cutting me out of their will, like expecting me to bankroll their lives while you sat on your ass, like calling me an embarrassment. He lifted his hands, palms out. It wasn't my choice. They made that decision. But you were happy to benefit from it. He shifted his gaze to the floor. I didn't wait for him to come up with another excuse. I'm not your safety net. I'm not your backup plan. And I'm definitely not your doormat. His jaw clenched. Fine, have it your way. But don't come crawling back when you regret this. I almost laughed. Regret? The only thing I regretted was how long it took me to stand up for myself. Goodbye, Ryan. And I closed the door in his face. I stood there, my hands still on the knob, breathing hard. That was it. The last thread snapped. I was done. That evening, I sat down and wrote one final email to my parents. No accusations. No rage. Just the truth. Subject, closure. Mom, Dad, I hope you eventually find peace with the choices you've made, but I won't be part of this dynamic anymore. I've spent too long trying to earn respect you were never willing to give. I've paid my dues, financially and emotionally. I won't keep sacrificing myself to be accepted. If you decide to treat me as family, not just as a paycheck, maybe we can rebuild something in the future. But until then, I'm stepping away. I wish you well. Noah. I read it twice, my eyes burning, then hit send. I turned off my phone, set it on the table, and just sat in the quiet. For the first time in my life, I felt free. No more guilt. No more shame. Just freedom. And that, I realized, was worth more than anything that could have left me in a will.